If you had to have a fitness game on the PlayStation 5, what PlayStation mascot character do you think should be your trainer? Let us know in the comments below, because we were talking about Ring Fit Adventure before this episode. Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond episode 668. My name is Jonathon Dornbush, and this is IGN's weekly PlayStation show where occasionally we talk about Nintendo games leading up to the show. I'm joined this week by Brian Altano.
Your dog didn't like that intro. He did not bark the whole time.
Yeah, pretty much. Max Scoville is also here with us.
That intro was rough.
And
do you want
Janet Garcia.
Should we pause the show and start all over?
Pause. Yeah, he's gonna. Yeah, let me grab him actually and restart.
I'm just kidding.
We're gonna keep going. Oh no,
that was a pun. That was a dog
I know
pun.
It was. I was playing the naive man who doesn't know, but seriously, he is underneath me waiting to bark. We're also joined this week by Janet Garcia. Hi,
What's
Janet. As much like PlayStation in not telling us much, I haven't talked much about what we're going to be doing this show, so it might be a little loose this week because PlayStation doesn't really want to say much, and I'm working on a review this week that is embargoed. But beyond that, we do actually, weirdly this morning, a bunch of PlayStation pre-order PS5 info came out about some of the biggest games, so we'll be talking about that, along with some confusion that my dog doesn't like about the transfer of saves from the PS4 to the PS5, along with actually a few questions from the audience that have been in the Beyond email. Thank you to everyone who's been sending those in that I thought we could talk about. But Janet, just to follow up from your last appearance, I did want to ask, I know we talked about it before the show, did you own any other UMD movies for your PSP besides Hink?
I did indeed. I owned Batman Begins, and I was talking about this right before the show. I also had like these third-party Logitech speakers, so I could really fully experience Batman Begins the way it was intended on your PlayStation Portable. So that was the other one that I had a lot and watched a lot. I actually have a very vivid memory of, this is like such a sad little nerd story, of one summer being like, today what I'm going to do is watch Batman Begins on my PSP, and I'm going to make like this huge decked out hot Cheeto filled sandwich and just sit there and watch Batman Begins at my kitchen table. And I did that, and honestly, it was glorious. I craved to reach that level of just joy and relaxation in the modern era. So yeah, that was my other UMD.
You know, you can do that. You can do that whenever you want. You can do that now. You can go put Cheetos on a sandwich, watch Batman movie on your phone.
See, right now I'm at the end of Whole30. I have one. This is my last full day, and then I have tomorrow, and then at midnight I'm gonna just, I don't know. I'm gonna have that sandwich and watch Batman Begins.
Actually, a great alternative to Cheez-Its on Whole30 is sand. If you eat a bunch of sand, is good. And then instead of watching Batman Begins, you can stare at the wall.
Yeah, I found that's pretty effective. I did say one of the things on Whole30 that I think is great is if you don't know how to cook, you will learn how to cook, because if you don't cook on Whole30, you will die. You will quite literally die. So that has expedited my cooking quite a bit. But yeah, that's my UMD experience.
You might also die a lot in an upcoming PlayStation 5 launch exclusive, Demon Souls, which is set to launch day and date with the PS5. I bring that up because we learned about the pre-order bonuses for Demon Souls, which I'm going to bring up on my computer. But I wanted to run down some of the attempts they are trying to get people to pre-order games for PS5, which weirdly you haven't been able to do up until pretty recently. You've been able to, pre-order the console, maybe. But other than that, the games have been hard to get. So right now, Demon Souls, there's a digital deluxe edition. There's no physical special edition we know of right now. It comes with an exclusive weapon, the Reaper Scythe, a bunch of cosmetics, a few items that it sounds like you get when you start up the game in advance, which will help you for one run, and then you'll probably use all of them and die. And then also the original soundtrack for the game. They also revealed a few other things, like for Spider-Man Miles Morales, you will get a few extra, bonus points at the beginning of the game. You get an early unlock of the Gravity Well item, which is one of his new power-ups that essentially allows enemies to be like sucked into this Gravity Well. And you also get to unlock an exclusive pre-order bonus track suit DLC. It's one of two suits that'll come with the pre-order bonus. And then the other PlayStation 5.
Did you say a track suit?
It's TRACK. It's like an acronym for track. Okay. Let me see if I can pull up. But not just like a track.
Not like one of my cousin's track suit, right?
No, not so much. I mean, maybe
because I would kind of suit. I would play that.
This isn't GTA 4, but for that you get they'll announce this other suit. I'm assuming it's probably something with Into the Spider-Verse, because on the Spider-Man page a couple weeks ago there was a copyright for Into the Spider-Verse there that mysteriously got removed. But anyway, yeah, it's TRACK as an acronym. And then last but not least, just wanted to mention also Sackboy, the A Big Adventure or whatever it's exactly called, for its pre-order bonus. They are announcing a set of costumes that are PlayStation themed, including Deacon St. John from Days Gone, Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima, Sam Bridges from Death Stranding, and Connor from Detroit Become Human. Why not Kratos? I don't know. But so you get those, you get some avatars, you get a digital soundtrack, a digital art book. This is part of this weird rollout that I wanted to bring all these up, not just to let people know what they can get for pre-ordering, but also just to sort of bring up this. There are so many big unanswered questions that we talked about in weeks past when it comes to the PS5, and we're getting all this information about these games. I feel like the first party games are going to be the ones people pre-order the most. I'm surprised like these are the incentives that they're announcing first. I don't know about you guys. Like when it comes to launch, I want to know more about the system, the UI, the stuff we were talking about last week, like getting a few extra avatars because of Sackboy. I pre-ordered it. That's not the reason I'm getting a PS5.
Yeah, it seems like the sort of like individual, adjacent software companies are allowed to spill the beans on what they're doing in their kind of personal silos, but we're still in the dark on a lot of big picture stuff here. I'm confident that we're going to get some big drop, maybe like in video form, or just like a blog update or like a Wired article, something would be nice. But yeah, it is interesting starting to see this stuff trickle out. I think just before we started, they announced the pricing structure on Godfall, which is not great. Not crazy about it. For like a hack and slash looter shooter, it's $70 for the base version, $90 for the next version up, and then $100 for the ascended version.
Yeah,
which I'm not sure what that means. But it's $60 on PC. So we're starting to see that like Nintendo fans know about the Switch tax, which is where everything is more expensive on Switch arbitrarily and inexplicably. And I think we're going to start seeing that with PS5. And I think we've spent a long time this year, the year before, going, are we going to get cocky Sony again? And then we're kind of like, no, I don't think we are. They seem pretty, they seem pretty cool with a lot of stuff. Like a $400 entry level console for them is pretty great to get into next gen, but $70 base game across the board, that's going to sting after a while. Like, I think that's really, especially like that is the base version of the game. Like if you start getting into extra versions for $80, $90, $100, I'll preface this by saying, like, growing up, video games were crazy expensive, right? Like I remember buying like Clay Fighter 33 1/3 for like $90 and then coming home and playing it and being like, oh boy, I'm not good at money. So I understand that there's a precedent, and I did expect video games to go up at some point, but they didn't all go up at the same time here. And so I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of the slow trickle effect. And I think what's interesting here, and maybe I think it's easy for things to get blown out of proportion because we don't have that much data. Like the PS5 is so new, it's not even out yet. But one thing that stuck out to me about these pre-order bonuses is kind of what's not there. So I know there's a physical, like, special edition for Sackboy: A Big Adventure on PS4, but not on PS5, which is just very odd. And it does kind of, for me as like, the person who's a huge fan of physical media, I'm like, is this sort of the end of the stupidly lavish like collector's editions for physical copies? Because your whole like, if you think of the market and who's out there, like, first of all, it'd only be people that have like the PlayStation if you're selling a PlayStation special collector's edition. And then secondly, it's only people that maybe have that physical one, or maybe we'll see more. I know in the last gen, we saw a lot more of collector's editions that maybe didn't even come with the game. So maybe they can kind of continue that line to sort of give you those options there. But I do wonder, I'm like, is this the end of my lavish garbage? Because I like buying my elaborate trash. And like digital art book,
I think it's just
the digital art book.
They know that there are more people who have PS4s, and just by that logic, that there's more people who would be able to buy that collector's edition. And I think, like, I don't, if there's, if there's only a handful, like if there's only a small percentage of people who are shopping for this game for the PS5 version, I think just having, the collector's edition sitting on a shelf is kind of, somebody in some marketing room probably had some very important graphs that made more sense than what I just said. But
yeah, I have like a couple points of that. I have a feeling that one, this year screwed up manufacturing for a lot of physical items in general. Two, you'll always get those because that is a really excellent and sort of not excellent. That is a very sort of strong way to upsell your most hardcore core audience. Whereas like a lot of us might just buy the base copy of the game, play it, delete it, or trade it in.
You know what I hate about those? What I really hate is that they don't do those for Game of the Year editions. Like I feel like it would make so much more sense for the second, like when a game is established as being great, like to have collectibles that come out after the fact. But the fact that it's like, hey, you can get this statue of this new Assassin's Creed protagonist who you've never actually played a game about, and the game might suck, you might hate it, who knows? But you'll have this big plastic statue to go with it, and it's like, I don't know. It'd be so much more sensible if they were like, we'll put out the regular game, and then when we do that victory lap with like the expanded version that comes with all the bonus DLC and stuff, then do the thing where you're upselling the hell out of it and be like, here's
think about like the way, like Max, the way you and I buy like, you know, movie merchandise, right? Like we see an alien in the corner of a trailer of a Star Wars movie, and they put out that toy. We go, oh, I want to get that toy because I bet he's going to do this, this, and this. And you watch the movie, and he's just in the corner of the movie for half a second, right?
We're talking about, for those of you listening, we're talking about Constable Zuvio, who had more toys released of him than he was in frames of The Force Awakens. He was in the film for 4.5 frames.
When I was at EW, our like resident Star Wars reporter, Anthony Bresnikan, did like a deep dive into like what the hell happened to Zuvio, because it was such a like they played him up in some of like the promo when reporters went to set. Yeah, that happens a lot in really weird ways. But you don't get that merch as much after a game launches.
And luckily we didn't get like I don't know. There wasn't like a platinum version of the Force Awakens ticket that came with a 4-foot statue of Zuvio. Although I wish there was.
That would be awesome.
I mean, like AMC was like a popcorn bucket.
Yeah. I mean, a big bucket you could flip over, use his hat as a tray. I think that's a big part of it. But also, like looking at, I keep thinking like it's gonna pivot more and more digital, and it is. But looking at the sort of anecdotal numbers on the amount of allocations for the physical versus digital versions of PS5, I think they're going to be selling discs for a long time, even during COVID, even when people don't want to go to stores and stuff like that, even when downloading's easier. So I think you're going to see those things. I don't know if you usually see those a lot around launch titles in general. You know, I think that like once the generation gets cooking a little bit, you'll see it. But also like, I don't know. I feel like Demon Souls would have been a really strong one for something like that, because that's a known quantity. It's a remake. It's part of a beloved genre with, you know, a huge fan base. You would think you would see a lot more of a sort of robust like physical rollout for that one, but it's kind of a bummer. I don't see that for Sackboy though.
So looking at this, we are also operating under a very stupid assumption. This is absolutely not a collector's edition. This is a special edition for children. Right. Like this is totally for like, I think it's easy to we're all sort of talking about, you know, toys for grownups in a sense. This is just straight up for like, oh, you want to give a kid a video game, but also like, you know, a stuffed animal. Like here's a plushie of Sackboy. Whereas we're like, you know, collector. Yeah.
I do want that Sackboy plushie, but
also, just one really quick thing. Can we mention how, you know, we have these characters who are like skins in Sackboy Big Adventure, and there's Sam Bridges, and there's also a Sack BB inside of the case. That's I wanted to draw attention to.
The Deacon St. John one specifically just really upsets me because he's just like, that dude's like, he's like wears so many like ragged pieces of denim, and he's all covered in blood, and he's like looking for his dead wife or whatever, and it just makes me sad for Sackboy.
Or is she?
Is she? I don't
Sarah
remember
was her name, right?
Whatever. He's real wrought up about something. I don't know.
I am transfixed on the Sack BB right now, actually.
Right?
What a sentence.
That is incredible. I know.
He's sort of like it's sort of like the proto Funko Pop, right? Does the Sack family predate everything?
I think the Sack family does.
I don't say Sack family.
What came first, the Sack or the Funk? We'll find out. Anyway. Wrapped up in all of this, one other thing I did want to mention, because you know we are talking about, obviously
wrapped up in this
weird sack of information, is info on another PlayStation 5 launch exclusive that I wanted to bring up because it's not a game we've really talked about on the show. It's not a game Sony has talked about much, but again, it is a launch day PS5 first-party published exclusive called Destruction All-Stars, which you maybe saw in the June premiere, and since then there's been like snippets of gameplay. they finally put out a bunch of information on the game. They put out, here's the full roster of characters, who are all new to this franchise. Here's some of the digital deluxe edition content, all these things. That game is a $70 full price launch title. And I guess I don't know, like, has this game at all registered for any of you? Because for me, it's like, it could potentially be great. It could potentially be like a Rocket League, Twisted Metal-esque fun multiplayer thing. But I don't know what function it serves as a $70 launch.
I am shocked that it is a $70 game, because it seems to lean pretty heavily on multiplayer. And it just seems like, especially when you're looking at, the massively popular free-to-play multiplayer games that have like huge active player bases, that you would be like, yeah, let's throw our hat into the ring, and it's $70, but it's a $70 hat. Who wants it? And it's like, you can just install Fortnite at launch. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think the game looks awesome. I actually am really curious about it, but it's just, I was expecting it to be at most budget priced, which I realize is a totally entitled thing to say, but at the same time, if I wouldn't have batted an eyelash if you told me when it was first announced that Apex Legends was a $60 game,
Right. Yeah. To me, like, from what I've seen of it, it totally looks like, like a very competent, fun launch window game that you would buy around, a new console. It feels like something you would have seen around the Nintendo Wii, honestly. Like, it's just sort of just like fun, almost family friendly game. Not necessarily mindless, but arcadey. And I respect that, but I'm with Max. If this is going to live and die by its multiplayer, I do find the pricing kind of peculiar, especially because it is going alongside all these like juggernauts, which I think in terms of like fleshing out the launch, that's a good idea. But I'm not sure. The thing is, like, I've always been more of an action figure kid than like a car kid. And so for me, like, if I was a kid, I'd be like Spider-Man. And then I'd trick my parents into getting Dark Souls or, Demon Souls.
Demon Souls, yeah.
And then I'd, maybe put that disc in the box of like The Lion King or something, so they didn't know what I had. But for this game, this is definitely like it services a different type of audience than I think like any of us are. But I think maybe it would have been smarter to make it sort of like cheaper or free to play, but in terms of like fleshing out the launch, I think it's a good thing to have. It seems like this is the kind of game, like if they had waited a month after the launch, when like people had beaten the initial rush of games and they were looking for something new, they maybe would have jumped on this. Like, as for launch, I do think it's going to get trampled a little bit.
I think it's actually like go ahead, Max.
No, you go ahead.
I think it's actually kind of a good time to put something like this out, because I think, to me, it's sort of the opposite perspective that Brian has. If it was a little bit later, by then there's more stuff to sort of play, and it's like a little bit more of a known quantity. But I know for a fact that, remembering how I was at the Switch launch, I was just playing stuff, like going deep into stuff that I normally wouldn't spend as much time on. Like, Fast RMX got a whole bunch of attention, like on NBC, and it's still a really great game. I love that game. But
it was also $20 at launch.
That's true too. I think price does definitely play a role, and it's always better for it to be cheaper. Like, we criticize Nintendo a lot for not making once you switch a pack-in game. Obviously, we don't really know like all the business details behind this and whether or not it's a good decision or not. It's a little surprising to see it at full price, but at the same time, I think it would make sense for Sony to be mindful of putting too many games at like this kind of discounted price, because then it sort of ends up setting the precedent where every time a game comes out, we're going to have this conversation of price. And I do think, besides the fact that that's ultimately like some level of a reductive conversation to have, it's a conversation that ultimately drives away from this idea of, is the game fun, and like just kind of positive marketing around it. So I'm actually a little surprised they even did that with Miles, though. I'm guessing that was a preemptive strike to say, hey, you can't get mad that it's shorter because it's cheaper, and kind of like a little bit of good faith there. But I'm guessing that we're not going to see, much like this generation, we rarely see a first-party game that is under the $60 price point. I think we're going to see that same thing this gen, but with that higher markup price.
Yeah, I made a joke on the show a couple weeks ago about how like all the industry needs to get together at like a campfire and like come up with a price across the board, and we all laughed at it. And then I put that joke on Twitter, and some very, very smart people chimed in to be like, that's wildly illegal. It's called price fixing and collusion. People like Adam Boyes and Matt Piscatella from MPD, people who get the business side of it more than my dumbass does. And so I apologize and deleted the tweet, because they're completely right. Like, if everybody got together and said games have to be $70, then the consumers don't really have a say in that. And so this is going to be another speak with your, vote with your wallet type of situation. So if they come in at $70 and it doesn't work out, they'll price drop. They'll price drop quickly. And they'll price drop, by Black Friday if they have to. Or
I guess I'm curious, like, does it have a single player component, or is this entirely a multiplayer game? Because that's another sort of, factor, is that if there's not enough people playing it, it becomes a game where you're just waiting for a lobby to fill up or whatever. It reminded me, I had to Google it because I totally forgot the name, but Starblood Arena, which was that
VR game,
VR exclusive arena shooter, which I didn't realize this, but that got shut down. That was an online only game, and I'm guessing had such an inactive enough community that they just pulled the plug on it. And that got just quietly sort of shuttered in July last year.
Oh, wow.
I'm surprised we didn't talk about it. I guess it was just kind of that
flew under the radar.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of that unpopular of a game. And like, I played that game. It was decent. It was okay.
Yeah.
There's just so many barriers to entry where like, and I have like a physical copy of it, I think, which is also weird, but to have to buy a physical game of something that is VR exclusive and online only, and then it just doesn't work. Like, it's gotta be, I feel like, I mean, imagine like buying that used and being like, all right, I'll check this out. And then just like putting it in and being like, oh, it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't.
So my question is like with $70 pricing for, at least first party games and possibly a lot of third party stuff across the board. Like, where does that leave PlayStation Plus once PS5 games start hitting that service, or do they hit that service for a while?
I was just about to bring up PS Plus because this feels like a game. It worked out. This feels like a game built for PlayStation Plus. As like you can buy it, but it's on PlayStation Plus for the first month, and it creates this really big install base and lets people get to it. It's worked for Rocket League, Fall Guys, other games. Like it just makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. They haven't really said much. Obviously, they're adding that PlayStation Plus collection as an offering, but that's not PS5 games. They haven't really said when or if those will be added. Like, presumably down the line they will. They obviously took off Vita and PS3 games, but it's curious what they're going to end up doing with that and how long then they include PS4 games still.
If they start adding PS5 games and then they go, we have to raise the price of PS Plus because look at all these $70 games you're getting, it's going to be like, well, you made them 70. Like, we didn't ask for that. Like, everybody else is going 60. You guys are going 70. And so I am worried about that. Like, we got some good news about PS Plus in the reveal a few weeks ago, right? Like, that is like undeniably good news that like people who subscribe to that service are getting a bunch of classic, awesome, game of the year candidate games. But we haven't really heard anything about like price increase or anything else happening with that service. And so I'm sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, the thing is, it's tied to online. It's different than, like Game Pass and games with gold and all that. They're a different pricing structure, Game Pass Ultimate. Whereas like if you want to play online on PlayStation, it's rolled into this sort of the way the games with gold thing is, but they don't really have their own Game Pass model right now. And so I do wonder if they can justify raising the price on that annually, because they know people are kind of bottlenecked into it. Like, so many games have like sort of mandatory online features at this point, like even like the FromSoft games have online stuff.
I do wonder if they would ever maybe introduce like a multi-tiered subscription model where maybe they don't raise the price, but they introduce a new tier that maybe has more of those PS5 games. I think it's interesting too, in that, talking about PS5 versus PS4 games, when really PS5 games are still PS4 games. So it's kind of in this weird in between too, where they kind of live in both worlds anyway. So I do think that in that sense, I could see them adding them to PlayStation Plus. But I do know, I forget exactly where the quote comes from, but the idea of, are you going to add like PS5 games to that PS collection? That's not really the model they're going for. Like, they're not looking to do a Game Pass thing. Hopefully one day they change their mind, because I love Game Pass, and a PlayStation version of Game Pass sounds awesome. Just put Game Pass on PlayStation. I don't really care. Like, I love that model and what you get with it. So I imagine they'd slow roll like those PS5 games into there, and that it wouldn't be that deep, especially because they are also PS4 games, at least at this point.
And I mean, just to like the Game Pass of it all, do they just roll PlayStation Now into PlayStation Plus, which we've talked about a lot on the show? They have a subscription service. you can download games from it. It doesn't just have to be streaming. There are PS2 and PS4 games you can download. That exists, and it's, they did the big price drop and all that stuff, and it seemed to click up interest, but not nearly in the same way of Game Pass. We saw, I think, Brian, you mentioned this last week's episode. Game Pass saw a huge uptick in subscribers over the last year. I think like 5 or so million. That's huge.
They went up 5 million over the last like 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, that's nuts. Whereas PlayStation Plus, for the most part, it increases, but it's pretty stalled out. Like the numbers for that don't raise nearly as dramatically as Game Pass is rising right now. So something additive, if they're going to keep PlayStation Plus a part of the PS5 core experience, I think even if it's a few bucks more to get PS Now in there, I think it's the probably best route.
Well, because I like at its best, I love PlayStation Plus. Like there's this nice sort of novelty Kinder Egg approach to it, where once a month they go, here's these games you're getting. I mean, like let's not forget, just a few months ago we got Fall Guys, right? Like a month or two ago. Like that was such an awesome surprise to be like, here's this game that like everyone is talking about and is super fun, and maybe you didn't know if you wanted to drop money on it, but here it is. So I love that, but I'm with you, Jonathan. Like they need to sort of reinforce the justification behind the pricing structure of that service, and they also need to drive new subscribers. Like you see this with any subscription model. You can't just rely on the diehards forever. Like you need new people to want to go in there and get that. And I think that PS4 collection is a big part of that. I think that's going to get a lot of people who were lapsed or hadn't even ever thought about signing up or are buying a PS5 as their first console. But still, like for people like us, for the hardcore people, like it still feels like we're buying that service because we have to, and not necessarily because we really, really want to.
I forget I'm subscribed to it until the free games per month are announced.
I got that email the other day being like, oh, we're auto renewing. And I was like, I swear to God, you guys did this to me like 4 months ago. Like,
are you
trying to get one over me? Because I can't do anything about it. I have to do this.
But speaking of the PlayStation Plus collection, actually, I'll jump right to this. Adam from Shetland wrote in to beyond@ign.com, which you can do if you have any questions for the show as well, and said, I didn't own a PlayStation 4 and have pre-ordered the PlayStation 5. I only own a Nintendo Switch currently. I'm looking forward to playing games like Spider-Man that I've missed out on, but I also plan on getting the PlayStation Plus collection. With 18 titles to choose from, where do I start? And we've, in the past, answered some questions about people throwing out, a few random exclusives at us. But given that this is a list that everyone day one who subscribes is going to get, I thought it might be fun to at least kind of look at the list a little more in detail, just because there was so much to talk around the reveal events. We didn't get to it in detail. But the list right now, and I have it up, is Batman Arkham Knight, Battlefield 1, Bloodborne, Days Gone, Detroit Become Human, Fallout 4, Final Fantasy 15, God of War, Infamous Second Son, The Last Guardian, The Last of Us Remastered, Monster Hunter World, Mortal Kombat 10, Persona 5, Ratchet & Clank, RE7, Uncharted 4, and Until Dawn.
God of War.
Brian.
Yeah, God of War.
God of War. Yeah.
That is like seeing that written down and hearing that's an insane list. That is it is incredibly cool to just have those right there. Yeah, I would definitely say start with God of War. That's my pick too. I think because it's story driven, and if you want to crush through it and just see it start to finish, you can. If you want to hang out, do side stuff, that's an option there for you too. It's also I don't think it ever really overstays its welcome, whereas some of these games can get a little long in the tooth.
I'm stoked about this because Battlefield 1 is going to get a huge surge in new players, and I love that game, so that's great.
Yeah, it's
there's a really good mix of games on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jen, I was going to ask you which, because obviously both the boys said God of War immediately. What about you?
Everyone was like, God of War. I'm like, oh, shoot, there was a right answer. That's all I was going to say. For me, obviously, of course, this depends on the kind of player you are and the kind of games you like. For me, what jumps out here is Last of Us Remastered, in case you didn't play Last of Us yet, or maybe it's been a long time, just because if you didn't have a PS4, that means you definitely didn't play Last of Us 2. And I absolutely love that game. I played both of them within a month or two of each other, and I just love that experience. So that would be one if you missed that on PS3. Once again, not sure what their history is with The Last of Us. Other than that, too, I think if you're into story-driven games and just really love story-driven experiences, I would recommend Detroit Become Human, because it's also shorter than God of War. God of War is awesome and probably might be the best game on this list, but it's still like a longer, meatier, and challenging experience. Like Detroit Become Human, you can't really fail at it. I mean, you can have like people die that you don't want to die, but that's about it. Of course, I was giving a disclaimer that I do think that game is kind of head-ass when it comes to its approach to race and protest. It's very like binary and simplistic, but the narrative structure of that game is so enjoyable. And if you like decision-based stuff, like you will at least appreciate what it's doing in that sense. And of course, like some of the other games, I think they're just like a little bit long in the tooth. Like Days Gone's a meaty experience. Persona 5 is very long. Like all of those are, for me, like when I have something like this, I kind of like to pick something that I can knock out sort of quickly so I can feel like I'm enjoying more of the collection rather than like, I'd rather spend like 60 hours across 2 or 3 games rather than like all the 60 in one game.
Exactly why I didn't just go Bloodborne, because I don't know where that could go for you. Like that could consume your life for months, or it could be like you could have the worst afternoon and then never want to play a video game again because you feel horrible, or a mix of both, which I think is what it was designed to do. But do get there eventually, please, because you will enjoy it, as you've heard before on this show.
That was what I was going to say about a lot of this list. Is there are some great like shorter experiences and stuff, like again on the choice side of things, if you want something a little sillier, Until Dawn is a good way to go there too. But Ratchet and Clank and RE7, if you're interested in those, probably wait and kind of align with when the sequels are going to come out in early 2020.
I still haven't played RE7, so I'm stoked that's on here. I'll get a chance to jump in there.
So good.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
so
trying
good.
to think what. Yeah, like I never finished Persona 5.
On that one, I'd say even if you get this collection, wait for Persona 5 Royal to go on sale.
No, exactly.
Because it literally fixes every problem I had with that game, which I already loved. But it's just, it is the way to play that game.
Max, play RE7, and when you get like 75-80% of the game in, text me, and I'll be like, congratulations, you beat the game. And then I'll send you a YouTube video of the ending. And you'll be like, that's one of the best games I've ever played. And I'll be like,
that all of us... Okay, my question is, and this is like, I guess maybe it is a little bit of shade, who just let the rest of that game keep going? Because everyone I talk to has the same reaction where they're like, it was awesome. And then you went to the other part of the game. They were like they had such like it's so funny too, because in a weird way, like I played with a friend who like loved Resident Evil and has played like pretty much like all of those games to some extent. This is my first one. And she was kind of pointing out, oh, this thing's very Resident Evil, or this thing's very different from Resident Evil. And that's just kind of a new experience for me. And she's like, that ending bit felt very classically Resident Evil, but in a bad way. So it's just like, actually, this is more traditional. I'm like, oh, they gotta go the other way.
Honestly, as a huge Resident Evil fan and like a huge fan of like, creature feature vintage monster nonsense, like my biggest gripe with that game is like there's a lack of diversity in enemies. Like there's just like you see pretty much everything that you fight in that game in the first few hours, and then you just keep fighting them, and like that's
you fight the Mudmen, right? The mold dudes who fall out of the ceiling.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, like the initial environments in that game are like so fantastic. They're so well built, and you're gonna totally dig them. I'm with you guys on waiting on Ratchet and Clank until it aligns with the sequel. Last Guardian's such a weird one because it's like it's like that room in the museum where they're showing a short film that's been on loop, and you're like, I don't know if I should be in here. This is kind of interesting. Like there's so totally there's like totally cool stuff about it, but and I think about that game a lot. Like it really stuck with me. I think it's really beautiful in a lot of ways and really special, but it's also incredibly cumbersome and frustrating. And it made me hate the dog a lot.
For whatever reason, I never played that when it first came out. Like I did a preview for that, and I remember just sort of being like, this doesn't feel great. Like this feels like a little bit clunky to the point that I'm sort of concerned. And then it came out, and that was the entire conversation around it. And I was just kind of, I mean, we'd all been waiting for that game for so long. I was just kind of sick of talking about it. Mm-hmm. And I think it was on PlayStation Plus, and I jumped in and I played it for like 10 minutes, and I was like, I'm not doing this. It's just such like, it pushes back so much in like a not deliberate way, like it feels like you're fumbling,
Yeah. I mean, once you get the hang of the sort of loop of it, it's more about just like, I don't know. It feels like you're driving the Austin, but it feels like you're driving like the Austin Powers car in that hallway for the entire game. But the thing is that the hallway keeps doing interesting things. So I guess there's that.
Yeah, not a great sell there, but you know.
No. This is why I'm very, very split on this game. Like, I think it's important and beautiful, and I think like the core relationship in the game is awesome. There's some like musical moments in that game and some cinematic moments in that game where like things happen and architecture collapses, and like I think just from like the perspective of like how obtuse and weird it is and the locales you visit, like if this was like an anime movie, I'd be like, Max, this is like one of the most beautiful things ever made. The fact that you ultimately do have to control it makes it like, I can't truly recommend it as something you should rush to. And something like Days Gone, I think is like for a list like this to just have that at your fingertips, like that game takes a long ass time to get going. Like, it has some serious pacing issues, but I think like once you get in kind of the middle of it, it's a totally fun, like kind of like crazy open world game, but then it just keeps going and going and going too. But maybe you're looking for that.
At the end of the day, like these are all effectively free games, and most of them are phenomenal, and all of them are, I would say, at least good. And that's huge. That's so cool. And also just to be like, I'm going to check this thing out. There's no like, if you don't like it, it's not a big deal. You give it a shot. Try it out, and that's such a wonderful just an option to have. Like, I feel like so often with PlayStation Plus, it's like, here are your 2 games for the month, and one of them you don't like, and the other one you already have. And it's like, well, all right, then I guess I'll wait a month for something else to be excited about. But I can't even imagine jumping into like not having a PS4 and then having this sort of thrown in front of you is amazing.
Imagine like sort of doing a cumulative like runtime total of all of these games to be beaten on average. You throw in something like Final Fantasy 15 in there, or even Uncharted 4, which is like the longest Uncharted game. Yeah, Fallout, right? Battlefield, which you could potentially play in multiplayer forever. Like you're looking at like hundreds and hundreds of hours of video games here, which is that kicks ass.
This will definitely
$70. So
yeah. I mean, this will definitely hold you over until they start launching more PS5 games.
We got games on the PS5. You don't need to go to the digital or real store. You got games.
Yeah. So what I do wonder about this is like, if you look at what Nintendo did with their online stuff, where they just sort of like piecemeal dropped NES and SNES games, once a month at first, and then totally arbitrarily, like every 3 or 4 months, they'll just wake up and they'll be like, who likes Donkey Kong Country 3? And you're like, some of us. That's like weird strategy, but I wonder how this is going to grow. Like, is this list going to grow? Is it going to change? Is it going to evolve? Like, is this just sort of like this like classics, like library collection locked in the vault, or is this like a Criterion thing where it's going to keep evolving and growing? Because I would love to see, like, I wonder if they're going to pull games out of this, if they're going to do like the whole, Bloodborne's going into the vault for a couple months, and then like instead we're putting in, Sekiro. Like, that could be cool.
I mean, if this is an answer to Game Pass, it is a really strong start, and that's something to be excited about.
It's sorry, go ahead.
I wonder if they do the thing where they swap stuff out, and this is again totally hypothetical at this point, but if it's going to be like the same the way PlayStation Plus has, where you have to manually add something to your library and it's yours as long as you're subscribed, but if you unsubscribe, then I guess it disappears.
Right.
But like, it would be weird if they. Yeah, I mean, I guess I sort of answered my own question. It's just I imagine it would suck if you had, if you had a limited amount of PlayStation Plus subscription, like if you had like a 3-month pass or something, and you got like a hefty way through Bloodborne, and then it just disappeared, and it was like, you don't own that anymore, you don't get it. Like, sorry.
This is the problem on Game Pass a lot too, and like what they're pretty good on that service on being like, this is going away. Like I'm like, and you see this on Netflix too. They kind of hide that information. You have to go like seek it out. But that's why people were like losing their minds when they're like, The Office is leaving Netflix, and it's like, guys, you've had like 40 years to watch this show. Like,
what if I want to watch The Dinner Party again?
Yeah, I don't pirate it.
Through. Yeah,
or sign up for Peacock.
Yeah.
What's hilarious about stuff leaving Game Pass is, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this sad shame spiral of Game Pass and not using it. But like, sometimes stuff will leave that I downloaded but never played, and no, I was never really gonna play. But like, I liked the option. Like when Metal Gear left, I'm like, no, I wanted to maybe play that at one point again, or at least watch that cutscene with the rain. Like it's just it's that feeling of, it's not so much that it's not there, but it's like feeling like you have the option removed. I definitely think Max is onto something where they probably will let you keep it as long as you're subscribed if they do filter this out. I feel like they're not itching to make this a collection that they continue to add to because they do want to avoid that Game Pass model. What I think would be really cool is if they did like an annual refresh or addition to these. I think that'd be a really fun way to celebrate like how PlayStation history is evolving over time and the amazing games that are being added. Like I would like to see this get some form of at least anniversary treatment because I do think the awkward Nintendo style drop is just it creates a lot of anxiety and like stress of like, oh, when is it going to happen? Is it ever going to happen again? But like the monthly would be too much, kind of like a too much of a subscription model and too close to regular PS Plus. So I think having either annual or for some anniversaries or something like, what if on the next Last of Us Day they have Last of Us 2 come into the fold or something like that alongside whatever. I know they mentioned they're going to have some additional announcements related to that franchise. Like seeing something like that where it feels like a meaningful update would be really, really cool.
I was actually reading on the blog and it said that if you download Bloodborne and you beat Rom, the vacuous spider, you can keep the game forever. And if you don't, then it deletes automatically. And
I hate that spider. That awful spider.
Everyone hates that spider.
I was stuck on that spider for so long. Good Lord.
Why does it always come back to spiders on this show?
True. Yeah,
They
the
suck.
Astrobot spider, Rom.
I don't actually. It's weird. Rom
Top
is such a
10
dumb.
PS Sony spiders.
I want a Sackboy Rom spider.
Spider-Man.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, Rom is
True,
such a weird lumpy spider that she doesn't really bother me that much. But those other church spiders later on definitely give me the squeamies.
That's not a good room. I don't like that room with all the spiders in it.
I have this weird like kind of inconsistent arachnophobia where they scare me. They scare me at some scales and others not so much. Like a spider that's like big enough to crush a city, I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. That's not a big deal. But like a spider that's the size of a dog, I'm like, oh no. Or like,
you should play Metro Exodus. That has some good dog-sized spiders in it.
Metro, specifically, there was that trailer for the second Metro they had at E3 where it had a spider running across the gas mask in it, and I threw my laptop and like walked out of the room. I was like, I can't. I'm never playing that game because that is the grossest thing. Because that's like a good old hand-sized like wolf spider. That's too.
If
scary.
I see a spider in my apartment, like I'll throw it out the window. But if I see an ant, I'll kill it because I don't ever feel like anyone's like, oh, we don't have enough ants. Like that's just it's. And that's probably like there's definitely like an inherent bias there. I just feel like spiders are putting in more work, even though an ant is lifting 50 times its own weight, it seems like there's more of them, so
it's still not a lot of
more
weight.
justifiable to kill. This is horrible. That's borderline genocide, but that's just the way my brain works. I'm sorry. Let's talk about anything other than the insects.
Yeah, I don't know why we're talking. I'm sorry. I don't.
You guys did. You don't know why.
We got off with the dog bark, and it's all downhill from there. We're starting talking about Ring Fit Adventure.
Rom the Sacuous Spider Sackboy remix.
Anyway, I do just want to say the phrase church spider sounds like the name you would give a bunch of old women at church who like plan all the events, but also are like the gossips at church who talk down about everyone when you're not around.
Pipe down, you old church spider.
That's what Beyond listeners now are. You're the church spiders. I
love doing the show with you guys. God damn it.
I do want to move on to, actually, we did get a couple other questions that relate to some PS5 stuff that's sort of been up for debate right now. One of the things that Philip wrote in to Beyond at IGN.com and said, with PS5 confirmed to run most of the 4,000 plus PS4 games through its backwards compatibility, do we know if we will be able to carry over PS4 saves through to PS5 via either PlayStation Plus cloud saves or USB? I wouldn't want to lose the hours of gameplay I've put into every experience of this generation. And Andrew asked the same largely. My question is about backward compatibility. I know they said PS4 games will be playable, but do we know if save files will be able to be ported over like Xbox does? I am still trying to finish Persona 5, and I'm terrified if I sell my PS4, I'll have to start over. And that seems like a big thing we should know.
Tell us now.
I will say we reached out, like I got these questions into Beyond, and we've reached out to PlayStation. As of the time we're recording this, they haven't responded. They might afterward. They said they're looking into things, but we don't have this as a question. And in the same week when Xbox is showing a lot of features of like how backward compatibility works and how all this stuff works, it's one of those lingering like, oh yeah, seems like it should be obvious.
When Xbox is sending Xboxes to people to play with and look at and do stuff with, Sony, we don't even know how much usable space is on the hard drive or if save files work. Like,
I'm convinced that the PS5 is still just a render. Like, I don't think no, I'm screwing with you.
We
But
made that monstrosity? No.
yeah, no, it's like I'm one of the people that wants to trade in my PS4 to offset the price of my PS5. You know,
Can we talk about the annoying news, the really frustrating news that I'm really the only one directly upset by in this group?
Yes,
Yakuza?
boys.
So Yakuza, that beloved series, which has
I thought it'd be the remote.
it has 7 games that came to PlayStation 4 first, is going to be a day one Xbox Series X game, and it's coming to PS5 in F-word March. What the hell?
And apparently the PS4 saves don't migrate over for the PS5 version.
What the
As like the head of the Yakuza fan community, is this gonna move players over to Xbox?
So there's two.
But I will say this, and I said this last time, and I'll say it again for the people clipping out this one part to be like, Sony ponies cry over exclusives.
Strong headline.
Yeah, you like if you've ever been excited about exclusive game coming to PS5, this is what you deserve. Like, this is where we are. This is this land grab, this Monopoly game happening all the time.
So what's annoying about this is it is going to be a day one game on PlayStation 4. So you can play the PS4 game. Which also, by the way, it's been out on PS4 for like a year and a half now. So don't Google it because you'll have it spoiled for you, like I did before interviewing George Takei. But
we've all been there.
This is
you know how it is.
This at home now. Yeah, you know that
Max,
feeling when you're about to interview George Takei.
You know how it goes.
Yeah, I remember Leonard Nimoy screwed up a boy in his blob for me once. I was very cross.
So no, like, to go back to the exclusivity thing, like I'm happy that more people are able to play a Yakuza game. I am extremely annoyed that I don't know where to play this now. Like, because I presumably will start on PS4, but this is a hefty game. This is a large RPG. I would like to play it on PlayStation 5, but the fact that the save doesn't carry over means that I'm like, where do I don't know how to go. Like, I don't want to be playing my PS4. I'm guessing I can't play the PS4 version on PS5, or can I? I don't know that.
Yeah. Whereas on Xbox it'll carry over. Yeah.
And the weirdest thing here is this bothers me for one of two reasons, and I'm not sure which it is. Either this means that the PlayStation 5 is conceivably trickier to develop for than the Series X is, which I'm getting sort of deja vu with the like, we've heard all about how special the new hard drive is and how it's cutting edge and all that, and I'm just sort of getting.
There's actually been like tons of anecdotes about how easy it is to develop for PS5. So that's
okay.
You can. Okay. I don't think we're going to get we're not going to get a Skyrim situation where you have to leave all your swords in the room before you walk through a door.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case. I saw like one headline rumbling about that. The other case is that Microsoft just drove a dump truck full of money up to Sega's house and was like, yeah, give us the timed exclusivity, which, I mean, that's cool, I guess. It's just sort of weird because it's a franchise that's like so firmly Sony. Like, it was for the longest time, it was a Sony exclusive series, and now it's like, oh, you play it first on Xbox, and that's where they revealed it. They showed it off on Microsoft streams and stuff, so it's not really a huge surprise. It's just sort of like, oh well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to trick or treat at the house with the big ass candy bars, man. Like, they just want to go to the place with the most money. There's no exclusivity anymore. Your friends don't want to hang out on the lawn. They don't care. They will scatter to wherever the money is, and that's fine because everyone's going to play that game, and Sony plays that game constantly. So I think the big issue here is like, you're less upset with Sega and more upset with PlayStation not just being like, here's how saves work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The biggest thing for me is, like, on the development note, I have heard those anecdotes and everything from devs about the PS5 being easy to develop for, but I think the disconnect I'm seeing, at least with Yakuza versus, we know Spider-Man Miles Morales saves will carry over. We know Assassin's Creed saves will carry over. I believe a few games have announced they will, but with Xbox, it just seems to be sort of like the de facto thing. And that's probably due to the way they're treating not just last generation, but the entirety of their generations, whereas Sony, for all the announcing PS5 games for PS4, still kind of has a bit more of a walled garden when it comes from one generation to the next. And so it seems like there is no blanket approach that's being told as the policy.
Well, the "we believe in generations" mantra shouldn't apply to saves. Yeah. It honestly doesn't apply to anything anymore after they basically backpedaled everything.
what ends up being weird is it does feel like we are running into the point where it feels like Sony is in competition with itself a little bit, and it ends up kind of affecting the player in a negative way. Like for me, as someone who's getting the PS5 at launch, which I'm still that it could be like the worst launch ever, I'd still be excited just because I like the idea of getting it immediately, just to be part of like that next gen hype. But it's like, okay, well, some of this stuff, it's coming to PS4 first or only coming to PS4 because that install base is bigger. But it's like, why am I penalized for your previous success? Like, I feel like as someone, a consumer who's buying this new product on day one, not that I need preferential treatment or anything. And I am also pro more people being able to play a game because that's good for the gaming community. But it feels like, why am I getting the short end of the stick by being you're already getting the short end of the stick by being an early investor because you always get like the first wave of models and like, oh, this one like has this one random problem occasionally. Like we've seen that happen with other launches of consoles or, the famous Ring of Death and things like that. That's always a risk. But like I go in knowing to take that risk. I don't go in knowing that I'm going to like be caught in these weird situations where I'm sort of tethered to my PS4, despite being like someone that has a PS5. And I do think that's where Microsoft does have the advantage of, oh, we don't really care about what you're playing on. We just want you here and come through. And do you need help paying for it? Because we have this plan. Like they have all these other things. And it's not that Sony needs a one-to-one model with that because they are playing a different game. But it's frustrating when we're playing a different game, except it's secretly the same game, except you also like don't have these things carry over. So it's like the worst of both worlds in a weird way. And I find that really frustrating at the start of this gen. It kind of like, makes it a little bit less exciting than it could be if they just had more transparency and kind of just thought about what these things mean and what kind of message it sends to what is now the PS5.
It's been what 7 years since like PlayStation got up at E3 and viciously windmill dunked on Xbox with the shortest video they filmed in a lobby in front of a curtain, which was Shuhei Yoshida and Adam Boyes being like, "Here's how game trading works," and they just handed a disc back and forth. And I feel like Microsoft saw that and they went into this generation being like, we need to be, aside from the naming conventions of our console, which are admittedly still stupid. They went into this generation being like, let's be clear, let's be transparent. And Sony has come so far from that philosophy, but in a negative way. Like, I feel like everything they're doing right now, the fact that everybody's spinning their wheels with so many question marks and being like, how does this work? How does this work? What does this carry over? Doorbell. We're at a point where I think like people don't really know what they're getting anymore. And that's such a frustrating situation because they could end this in a second. Microsoft put out a diagram like this morning that was basically just like, here's a circle. Here's like a bunch of pictures of devices. And it's like, oh, you like Game Pass? You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your laptop. You do it on your Series X, your Series S, Xbox, whatever you want. It's all here. And then with Sony, we're just like, hey, if I start a game on PS4, but it takes 100 hours and I play 30 of it, do I have to play that all over again? And they're like, please be excited for PS5. More pre-orders will be available soon. Well, just kidding.
But like, also, I guess we don't even have a straight answer about like backwards compatibility. So like if I start playing Yakuza Like a Dragon on PS4 and then I play the PS4 version on PS5, does it load fast or does it look better? Or do I have to wait for the PS5 version to do that? Like, I don't know. And then I can't use the same save files. It's just like, I guess at the end of the day, it's also stupid because like, this is a PS4 game. I know this because it already came out on PS4. Like you could buy it on PS4 in Japan. So like the fact that it's been quietly, like they did the exact same thing with Yakuza 0, which we all talk about like it's a PS4 game, but that was a PS3 game that they just did the exact same thing with. So it's like, okay, it's going to be one of those weird like threshold games, but I don't know. Yeah,
it kind of feels like there's like a bunch of companies in the group chat, and like some of them are using like old phones, and it's coming in different colors and stuff like that. Like again, there isn't clear messaging, and everyone is sort of fending for themselves. And I do hope that like the dust settles a bit, and there is just like a very clear linear path from last gen to next gen that outlines. This is where everything goes. This is how everything works. Right now, it's very Wild West. It's very case by case basis, and I'm willing to excuse that a little bit because it is a launch transition and it is a crazy year. But we do eventually need some messaging from the top, sort of being like, "This is our vision here," and then others can follow suit. Like I think that's the only real way to do this.
Yeah, it's I was just looking at the calendar. We're 6 weeks and 4 days out as we're recording from the PS5 launching.
That's insane.
That is how close it is. And, you know, we know about things like Mark Cerny talked about earlier this year, the boost mode that some PS5 games will apparently used for PS4 games to be able to, you know, offer better performance. But we haven't really seen that in play beyond that leaked, you know, Spider-Man teaser from way back when. And so it's one of those things where this week, as you guys were saying, a bunch of press has gotten access to Xboxes, and we saw people saying Sekiro runs at 35 frames on Xbox One X and runs at 60 locked on Xbox Series X. And it's like, here's just definitive proof of what the next gen upgrade is doing. And it's just, I want to see that stuff from Sony. Like, if it doesn't do that, let us know so we can plan accordingly and I can buy maybe some games on my Series X, or let us know what it does do so I can also plan accordingly. Because
Microsoft's being really smart because they're like, the game is the same no matter what, but if you get a better machine, you're going to have a better time with the game because it's a better machine. And it's like, oh, that's very straightforward. But I'm just sitting here scratching my head, wondering what exactly, like, if I can play Yakuza 7 on the PS4 version on PS5, and the boost mode makes it do stuff better, then what is the PS5 version? Like, what is it doing differently? Like, what makes that a different game? And I know that they're doing the generational thing, but it's just sort of like, do I need it? Like,
the dude has more chest hair, which is good. You can see it better. No, this feels somebody
you can like feel it, you know.
Feel the hair.
Oh, that's true. I'm gonna be able to feel
right.
Talking
don't finish
crawfish or whatever.
Yeah. No,
somebody the spider.
Somebody pointed this out on Twitter recently. Like somebody replied to me talking about this because I was like venting my frustrations about this stuff. And they said like the PS5 kind of feels like backing a Kickstarter. And I was like, yeah, like we gave them our money and now we wait. And every now and then you might get an email being like, good news, we finished one of the controller cables, and you're like, it's not what I'm looking for right now. Like, I need some real concrete info here.
Yeah, it's a very strange place to be 6 weeks out. And I'll say that like for anyone who's like, how dare, like you were saying, the Sony ponies now hate Sony. It's like that. I think undoubtedly, like it is hard to argue PS5 just has a flat out better launch than Xbox does. Like the games that are being offered, cross-gen or not, there's just a more interesting, varied lineup. Yakuza not included, that we're going to get on day one with PS5 that we're not going to get on Xbox. And the next year of PlayStation we know has really great looking exclusives, but it's like everything around that, I don't know what I'm going to be doing with my PS5 for the next year, or if I need my PS4 still hooked up just in case. And that's a weird place to be right now.
You know, honestly, Betrayal is a huge part of the Yakuza series, so I should have expected this.
True. Yeah. It just took 7 mainline games to get there. Brian, do you have to go? I know you were saying you had
I'm going to run.
Gotcha.
I love you all.
Love you too. Thank you for joining us.
Be good.
Of course. Goodbye, everyone, and good luck finding out news of the PlayStation 5 from that fleggling company, Sony, that has never done this before. But
we're going to hang out here for a little while longer and just see if any news happens.
Okay, you guys, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
This happens the second you stop recording, so just give it a rest, and then maybe some stuff will happen. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Oh no, trust me, I've kept the PlayStation blog up this entire time just in case. I do want to sort of wrap up with one last reader question, just because we've had so many from the email. Thank you to everyone who's been writing in.
Hey, can I point out that a dude from Shetland, a place famous for ponies, wrote in to say that he never was a Sony owner?
Why do you know that place is famous for ponies?
Because I know what a Shetland pony is. Why don't you know about Shetland ponies?
I'm gonna get to Google now.
They're like the only kind of pony I know. I don't know any other types of ponies.
Oh, it's so good.
Is that what Little Sebastian is?
Isn't it? Are we just gonna?
I don't know.
This is now a pony show.
Are all miniature horses Shetland ponies? There's got to be multiple kinds of miniature horses, right?
True. Yeah, there's got to be at least 3. Anyway, Michael wrote in and asked, I would love to hear discussion about this. While it is true that Sony makes a ton more money if you buy games digitally from them rather than at a retailer, probably why they can price the digital console lower, isn't it true that the digital version of PS5 could help game developers as well? There is no secondhand market for games if everything is digital, meaning especially indie devs can sell more copies. Doesn't the secondhand market really hurt small developers sometimes? Although if physical retailers no longer exist, I suppose Sony could jack up its cut of each game sold through the PlayStation Store, in turn hurting developers. And I kind of wanted to talk about this just because we've talked a lot about like the obvious value of PlayStation selling you the PS5 digital edition because they're the only marketplace for you after that. But the sort of the indie question of it all. And I wanted to bring that up because I do think it's an interesting one where obviously we've seen a lot of success via indie downloads on the Switch, and previous to that stuff on Vita and Xbox Live and whatnot. I wanted to preface this by saying at least a lot of indie games don't have physical releases, or if they do, they are limited run releases. So a lot of indie devs aren't necessarily impacted by that physical market directly, but yeah, that physical market, the secondhand market and everything does affect the industry at large, I think. Janet, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I do think in that sense, the framing of this becomes a little bit less relevant, because the idea of a small indie developers being like hurt by physical releases. It's like, if you can have physical releases as an indie developer, that's pretty cool, because it probably means that your game has a certain level of success, that you have like a fan base that sort of warrants that, or you have a publisher that's willing to pick up and support you in doing that physical release. I do think it's worth mentioning that even if it's not a physical benefit or a financial benefit to have like your physical copy out there and people can rent it or sell it or trade it in, there's still the benefit of it having shelf space and people seeing it and it having a presence in that way, or like also like that level of word of mouth marketing, and more people playing your game is always a good thing. Obviously you want to make money off of that. You don't want people stealing the game and all these other kind of nefarious practices, but generally someone did buy that game to some degree, so you are still getting some level of financial benefit. And there is still like, you kind of have to, in terms of any business, weigh the benefits and cons of doing these different deals, and that's true even in the digital sense. I mean, I think the idea of simplifying it to digital is automatically better for developers kind of negates all the different pricing models we've seen, whether that's on Steam, whether that's a Game Pass deal. Should you have your game free on like PlayStation? Will you get X amount of dollars up front, or you have this, but then are they going to support the server costs that's going to cost for you to be able to actually operate and have your game be successful if you do get a certain amount of growth? Like, there's all these different deals. And I think as much as I can't speak in depth to these things, it's more than just you have your digital deals and your physical deals, and the digital ones make more money because there's so much nuance as digital space evolves. And I think it's going to evolve even more as we're going into next gen, as we're getting like Stadia and Luna and all these other players kind of coming in to see how you're going to go about selling your game in that way. I think digital is becoming a lot more complex than it used to be.
Max, what about you? What do you think about
I saw this sort of secondhand market hurting developers argument in one of the comments on YouTube, and I thought it was odd, because I imagine like much bigger issues are just having prices locked at $60, or maybe now 70, or the fact that indie games are frequently like expected to be much cheaper. Like we see games that are ridiculously cheap, and I've seen like a number of devs that I follow on Twitter just being sort of like, no, please don't. Like, it should be $20. I'm sorry if that's too expensive. People need to eat, and like but yeah, the secondhand market, like to Jonathan's point, like there isn't really like a game has to be pretty substantially successful to warrant a physical copy and sort of in the indie scene in the first place. And yeah, it's an odd one. I mean, I don't know. I honestly, like, there's always the sort of the other thing, which is piracy, which I don't even know how, like, I feel like you don't hear about that as much. It's obviously still a thing, but I think distribution platforms have gotten a little more airtight, and we all hate intrusive DRM, but like that keeps people from stealing games. So yeah, it's a weird one. I don't know.
Yeah, no, the price point thing is a really good point. It's something I know that Tom Marks has talked a lot about, where it is that like discrepancy of games are 60, maybe now 70, and indie games can be perceived as too expensive when they're $20. And it's like, find a game that like there are not many AAA games, outside of the obvious ones like Skyrim and Fallout and whatnot, that maybe offer as many hours of play as something like Hollow Knight if you play every bit of it. Like, there are indie games that are dozens and dozens of hours of really, really great imaginative gameplay that cost 20 or $15, but to a mass audience, sometimes they think it's too expensive. And so I think that's the notion that indie games have to have this race to the bottom of cheapness, I think, is the biggest concern for them over the physicals.
And the other issue is, of course, digital storefronts are just, it's a huge competition to try to get your stuff front page promotion or get any kind of traction, because there's, you see like just how many games actually come out. Like, I mean, looking at Steam, like the amount of games that just get churned out, and there's like tons and tons of garbage there. Yeah, I mean, like I was looking into this. I was trying to figure out how many games come out a year, and it's something like it's in the thousands, and we talk about maybe a few dozen.
Yeah. I mean, even in this next week, Crash Bandicoot and Star Wars Squadrons come out on Friday on PS4 and Xbox, they'll probably take the top spots in the PlayStation store and the Xbox store for the next week. There's a really, really cool looking RPG I want to play next week called Eichenfeld that's coming out. That's this like 8-bit RPG about kids at a magic school, and it's been in development from this one dev for like 4 or 5 years.
And I was reading about it, it has this cool feature where if you buy it, J.K. Rowling doesn't get any of your money.
Yeah, it's a really great benefit.
It's going to be huge going into the next gen.
Yeah, that's going to be the one question we ask every dev. Can't wait for that era. Yeah, it looks great, but I don't know how much a storefront, promotion it's going to get. And if it doesn't, it's not a game that immediately grabs people like a Star Wars game, maybe. So it is definitely, I think, the storefronts, especially going into next gen when we haven't seen the PS5 storefront, how it's going to change is definitely a big question for how discoverability is going to be as we go into next gen. But yeah, I know we left last week with a lot of questions and we have even more questions now, but I think that probably is going to wrap us up. I do have one question that I think we can answer definitively, and that is, Max, do you have pockets today? And if you do, what is in them?
I have pockets. I'm wearing little shorts. I have all sorts of pockets. They're great, but I don't really use my pockets as much anymore because I don't leave the house. Yeah. But I got all sorts of great stuff around me. I've got a Mum-Ra from Thundercats.
Ooh, nice.
And I have a Gundam coffee mug. And I could keep doing this for a while. I have a statue of Pazuzu from The Exorcist, which I have to cover up his little penis.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I could do this for hours. I got really too much stuff here.
But that is, of course, what Up at Noon is for.
Yeah. Also, if you want to check out, I do a show every month. I don't know if it's a show. It's really just a video that I do every month about the games that come out in the month. And we usually put it up on the first of the month. And I did another one, surprise, for October. And it might be a good way of getting your eyes on some games you might not otherwise have known were coming out, because a lot of them do come out. And I try to have fun with those videos as much as possible. So
for videos that are pretty much just listicles, I do enjoy them quite a bit. You do a lot of really fun stuff with them. So I appreciate what you've been able to do in that format.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to plug as we wrap up?
Yeah, actually, tune in on Friday. Brian and I are going to be playing Star Wars Squadrons, which comes out. And we're doing like a launch day stream, and I haven't touched that game, so I have no idea what to expect. But
nice.
I think that's at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, and then of course on Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific, we're going to do Up at Noon, which pretend that title makes sense. It doesn't.
It does if you're in Fiji. And Janet, what about you? Anything to plug?
Always just IGN guides. Use our guides, especially because we're still doing heavy support on Animal Crossing, and that's getting its update tomorrow at midnight or 9 p.m. or 3 a.m. or whenever Nintendo decides to drop that. So we'll definitely have all that coverage. So if you are still looking for game help, check that out. And of course, we're having guides for all the major games, Star Wars and Crash. We're going to have guides. So search IGN guides when you look up for game help stuff or IGN wikis.
I hope Crash Bandicoot find his dead wife.
Spoilers.
Yeah, she's or missing. We don't
Who knows?
know. We have no way of knowing because no one finished the game.
Stay tuned for the DLC where you'll definitely find out. I am working on many things that are unfortunately embargoed, but I will say look out for reviews and previews for me of upcoming games you might think I might like or maybe coming to PlayStation platforms. That's about all I can say for now. But anyway, that's about wrapping things up for now when it comes to this episode. Thank you, Max, and thank you, Janet, for joining me for this episode. Thank you to Brian as well, but he's gone, so who cares? Thank you, of course, to Red, our producer, for also producing the show. And thank you to everyone out there listening and watching. Beyond is normally live Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific at beyond.ign.com, youtube.com/IGN Beyond, and your favorite podcast services around the world. Please make sure to rate and like and subscribe and all those things for it, especially because we'll be doing a lot as we get into the PS5 launch. But anyway, that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching. We hope you're safe. We hope you're well. And as always, Beyond.
Beyond.
Beyond.